Ladies and gentlemen, hello again and welcome back to our news program, to our L24 special coverage that focused on Gaza Strip and what is happening in general in Palestinian territories. Now, again, I'm joined with Mr. Farouk Kasibawi, a political analyst, management advisor from New Zealand, alongside with James Dorsey, who is a geopolitical analyst and senior fellow at the Middle East Institute, NOS, from Singapore. Also, we have Mr. John Phoenix, who is an international relations expert from England. Gentlemen, thank you so much for accepting the invitation to this debate. A short break and we start our discussion. And before we delve into our discussion, let's watch this report by Hussam Burkan concerning the latest development in the region.
The attacks on the Palestinian resistance sites by Zionist occupation forces before dawn left the citizens of Gaza in shells. Hamas has warned against the continuation of these attacks and attempts to change the status quo in Al-Aqsa Mosque. Meanwhile, the Palestinian National Council denounced the continuous aggression against the mosque and the silence of the international community toward it.
The continuation of the occupation's attacks and attempts to change the status quo in Al-Aqsa will explode the entire region.
The Arab Parliament issued a statement condemning the Zionist aggression and calling on the international community to intervene immediately to stop the escalation. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan and his Iranian counterpart Hassan Rouhani stressed the importance of uniting the Islamic world to preserve the status of Al-Aqsa Mosque.
It's a flagrant challenge to international law, international conventions and treaties, and the principles of human rights.
China's special envoy to the Middle East expressed deep concern over the conflict in Palestine and vowed to continue working towards a prompt and appropriate settlement of the Palestinian issue.
Beijing will continue to work hard to promote a prompt and appropriate settlement in the Palestinian issue.
In Jordan, hundreds of citizens marched in support of Al-Aqsa and to condemn the increasing Zionist aggression. This comes as the Zionist entity witnessed demonstrations and significant internal division as a result of the extreme policies of Netanyahu government.
So, before tackling this discussion, let me read for you this piece of information. Irish Minister for Foreign Affairs and Minister for Defense, Michael Martin, expressed deep concern over increased Zionist violence in the occupied Palestinian territories, particularly the violence by Zionist forces at the Holy Mosque of Al-Quds. Hundreds of Jordanians, on the other hand, staged rallies and sit on today in various governorates in Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, including in the capital Amman, in the condemnation of the Zionist attacks and measures including its aggression against Al-Aqsa Mosque in Al-Quds. Members of the US Congress, on the other hand, have denounced the attack by the Zionist occupation forces against the worshippers. They said that the year after year, Muslims who worship at Al-Aqsa Mosque during the holy month of Ramadan are attacked during 1.11, regardless of one religion or ethnicity, should be brutally attacked simply for practicing the faith. So, Mr. Dorsey, I'll be starting with you since you are in US. And do you think what is happening now in Palestine in general kind of is a denunciation likely to bring a change in the U.S. position toward the Palestinian cause? I mean, now, if you think that U.S. has changed everything and its status against this Zionist entity, the so-called Israel, do you think this will bring a solution to the Palestinians?
I don't think that international condemnation at this point, it's morally important, but it's not going to change anything on the ground. I think what we're seeing on the ground is basically a fallout of Israeli occupation of the West Bank, and as well as its boycott of Gaza or siege of Gaza, and Israeli restrictions on freedom of expression and worship. What I do think is that the Israelis, in a sense, walked into a trap, and they became victims of their own faulty logic that only violence is going to resolve the problem. And what I mean by that is that Palestinians were clearly going to resist Israeli restrictions on freedom of worship, who can attend prayer sessions at the Al-Aqsa Mosque and when they can attend them. And the Israelis walked into that trap of resistance by responding with force rather than simply letting this happen. And if there was going to be an impingement on the ability of others to pray in the mosque, then that would have worked against those that are trying to exploit the situation for their own purposes. And there's nothing illegitimate with those purposes. Don't get me wrong.
Very good points you have raised. So, kind of, Mr. Dorsey, staying with you, do you think this kind of the aggression happening right now in Gaza, probably in the borders with Jordan, kind of is used as a cover to hide the deviation, I believe, happening right now in the Zionist entity?
I don't think it's an issue of deviation from Israel's internal problems as they regard widespread Israeli opposition, public opposition to judicial reforms that this government is proposing. I think what you saw was an Israeli response to Palestinian resistance that then provoked missile attacks both from Lebanon and from Gaza, to which Israel then responded. With other words, what you're getting is a tit for tat. I don't think that this is deliberately created to deviate from other problems, but it's a logical consequence of the occupation itself and the way that Israel administers that occupation.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. What are you saying on this, Mr. Farouk? He's saying this is it has no link with what is happening inside the Zionist entity and the strikes.
I don't think so. I think violent escalation is a well-known political tool that is always used by governments of oppression that want to change the outlook of the public towards something other than what is currently happening. I may agree to an extent that what is currently happening in the occupied territory is as a result of religious occasions for both parties. I mean, we have the Jewish Passover from one side and the Islamic Ramadan on another side. However, the continuous escalation of violence year after year and religious occasion after religious occasion is no doubtly going to lead to an explosion in the region. No doubtly going to lead to civilians turning into militants, specifically because of the loss of hope in the future, the loss of careers, the loss of livelihoods. Therefore, I believe that we are looking at a situation that can become violent chaos very, very soon. I agree with your esteemed guest in his comment regarding that the Israelis have made a mistake in escalating too early or too far at this stage. And unfortunately, this is something that we are seeing getting worse one year after the other.
Mm-hmm. Quite important. Now, coming to you, Mr. John Phoenix, what is your comment on what Mr. Dorsey just has stated, that it has no relation what is happening inside the Zionist entity and the latest attacks?
I mean, just keep in mind, this is not the first time regimes use such tactic when they have internal problems. They created the external enemy. They created a situation where, in this scenario, they divert the attention from what's happening within the regime to the next door neighbor, or as you know, that this is not the first time especially the Netanyahu government used such tactic. But the problem is now we are looking at what happened. We're not looking at the roots of why this is happening. I mean, the so-called Passover, why had to be Passover inside Al-Aqsa Mosque? Why the Israelis had to blockade the whole mosque and only allow those who are under 40 years old to attend Ramadan prayers, evening prayers. What kind of so-called a free movement and a free right of worship, where you had to be followed by age, where if you are over 40, you're not allowed into the mosque. You all seen what happened in the mosque, the brutal attack on women and children. Now the cowards, who are attacking children and women, brutally attacking people, kick them out. Just imagine that happened in a Jewish synagogue. You'll have all Europe start talking about, anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism. This is not the first time they attack worshippers in the mosque. And then regard to what happened after that, obviously this retaliation from the Palestinian side is a normal retaliation. It happened when they attacking people in Shafat, Palestinians in Gaza, attacked the Zionist entity in support of their brothers in Jerusalem, where settlers were taking the houses of the Palestinians in Shafat. So it's normal that when that happened, they provoke the situation with the Palestinians. And then the whole world started crying about how the Gazans and Lebanese throw a few missiles to the Zionist entity. But the Zionist entity attacking Syria daily, the bombing Damascus and other parts of Syria. We do not hear anything about that at all. There's no Western media cry about the international law, the Zionist regime attacking a sovereign state, sovereign country. So this is not only what happened in Al-Aqsa, it's been building up, because the situation, for example, Gaza, just keep in mind, the 365 kilometer with 2.48 million Palestinians. No health services collapsing, no water. 1 out of 10 people get access to clean water. You just imagine that, according to Oxfam, I'm not saying that, Oxfam, the health service, according to the MAP, Medical Aid for Palestine, collapsing. I mean, this is a build-up. Gaza being under the blockade from 2007. This is a concentration camp where they cannot travel, they cannot move out of their Gaza Strip. They cannot even travel to Jerusalem for medical aid. For some people needed a medical operation in Jerusalem for the big mosque there, hospital called Al-Maqasid. And when they wanted to travel, they would get arrested in the checkpoint and ask if you want to go to the hospital to treat your child who suffer from cancer, you need to work with us. You need to give us information about Hamas. And the only refuse, they send you back. We had to look at the whole issue, not just what happened now. It is building up to the situation where we are in today. And now, what makes it worse now, that this government, which is obviously, I'm not saying the previous government is better than this government, but this is clearly a Zionist settler government led by a fascist Netanyahu, who actually tried to impose his will on the Palestinians. And Palestinians have a right to resist the Zionist occupation, have a right to reject their interference in their holy mosque, Al-Aqsa. And it's happening, as I said earlier, it's happening every Ramadan. It's designed to tell the Palestinians, we are in charge here, not you. 500 checkpoint in West Bank, which means every 10 minutes you'll be stopped and searched for about 30 minutes to an hour. And by the time you want to travel a distance of an hour, it takes you 3 hours. It is not just what happened in Al-Aqsa today, it is what's been happening. Hawara, last time we had a show, we talked about Hawara, where they went to the town, a small town, and then destroyed the houses, burned the cars, attacking people. A lot of people got injured. And actually, after that show, I just realized that was an advert in a military magazine calling the settlers to gather and attack the town of Hawara, certain time and certain day. So even the army incite this fascist settlers attack on the Palestinians. So we had to look at the issue from not only what's happening now, it's from the roots of what's happening today.
Quietly understood. I believe you are meaning that we have to tackle the big picture of what is happening in Palestine. Now, let's tackle another point. Previously, we have contacted Mr. Yasser Khadaf earlier. He's working as an Ahrar spokesperson, and he has this to say.
يعني نحن إذ نبارك العملية البطولية.
We bless all this heroic operation and all the operations carried out by warriors and heroes of the Palestinian resistance in the Gaza Strip. These operations that come in continuation of a long series of heroic acts carried out by the sons of our brave people. These operations come as an efficient, immediate, urgent and shattering response to the continued aggression of the Zionist occupation against the children of our Palestinian people. This operation is considered a strong slap in the face of the Zionist security and military system that the Zionist occupier brags about. It's also real evidence that all the occupation's attempts to repress the resistance and repress our people and the attempts to uproot the resistance and kill its momentum are doomed to failure in front of the strong will of our people. Therefore, this operation has a big impact on the Zionist occupation.
عزيمة شعبنا الوثابة بالتالي هذه العملية لها وقع كبير على الاحتلال الصهيوني.
Coming to you, Mr. Dorsey, Hamas spokesperson said that Tel Aviv operation reflects the will of Palestinian youth to defend their land, stressing that they will never stop until the Zionist entity stop its aggression. The man who carried out the operation who was named as Youssef Abu Jaber, a 45 years old Palestinian young man from Al-Kafr Qasim. In your opinion, Mr. Dorsey, will these operations continue in light of this continuous aggression by the Zionist entity?
Look, I think what you're going to see is continued tit for tat, which will involve Hamas. It will involve the Israeli military and security forces, and it will involve the Israeli settlers on the West Bank. What I do think is true is that all parties to this to the current developments, meaning the Israelis, Hamas, including the settlers actually, as well as the Lebanese government and Hezbollah, nobody wants us to escalate to a point in which you get a full-fledged war. Hezbollah, for all practical matters, as well as the Lebanese government, would rather not be part of this, even if they are not going to speak out against missile attacks from Lebanese territory in response to Israeli actions. Hamas, I think, welcomes the escalation as long as it can be controlled and contained. And the Israelis are going to make a point of insisting that force is the only way to resolve this crisis, and that they will do so no matter what.
Since you have mentioned Lebanon, I have just a simple question that comes to my mind. Why did the Zionist army respond first in Gaza while the missiles come from the first part from Lebanon?
Sorry, can you just pose the question again?
I'm saying that why did the Zionist army first respond to this aggression in Gaza while the first missiles comes to Tel Aviv from Lebanon?
I think it's obvious. The Israelis have, rightly or wrongly, determined that the missile attacks are operations by Hamas, irrespective of from where they are being launched. Gaza is the stronghold of Hamas, so it's an obvious target.
Quietly understood. Mr. Kassibawi, at least now 6 Palestinians were injured by the Zionist occupation forces today during the weekly anti-occupation protests in the village of Kafr Kaddoum in the northern West Bank province of Kalkilia, in a clear message that the Zionist forces will continue to quell and rally or protest staged by the Palestinians to demand their rights to peace and stability. What can you say about this?
This is the 110th or 111th martyrs that we see during the year of 2023. The escalation is just going to keep going. Palestinians have been used to giving martyrs, have been used to dying for their cause over the last 50, 60, 70 years with no issues. I'm not too worried about our martyrs. What I am expecting is for these martyrs, for the 6 souls to ignite the fire inside the hearts of all Muslims and all Palestinians around the world to defend Al-Aqsa during this month. Of course, I mean, I believe it was not the right way to handle the situation. I believe it was quite stupid, actually, on the part of the Israeli forces to align themselves with the fanatics and the racists and the Zionist in the Zionist faction of the political scene. However, it is to be expected because these racist Zionists are the ones who are bringing the true face of this occupation to the rest of the world. Palestinians, Arabs, and Muslims have been, over the last 70 years, repeatedly have told the world that what is happening is a racist appetite system that is against all human nature, against all human rights around the world, against all agreements that have been agreed upon with all the nations of the world. We have always faced the Jewish media machine that has changed facts, that has lied about what is happening on the ground. And today we're seeing these Zionist activists that are giving us the true face of the situation. Therefore, we're not too worried about the Palestinian martyrs. We expect that more Palestinian martyrs will come along. We're expecting more Muslim and Arab martyrs to be giving their lives in defense of Al-Aqsa Mosque.
Mm-hmm. Quietly understood. Now, still with Mr. Yasser Khalaf, who is the spokesperson of Al-Ahrar movement, we asked him about his prediction on the Palestinian faction's response to the latest Zionist aggression against Gaza and Al-Quds and in Al-Aqsa Mosque, and he replied with this.
كلما زاد عدوان هذا الاحتلال كلما زادت البسالة الفلسطينية.
The higher the occupation's aggression becomes, the higher the Palestinian bravery will get, and the stronger and more determined the resistance will be. It insists on playing its role to teach the occupation lessons. The occupation should know very well that the resistance will never stop, and that the heroes of the resistance will always be prepared to take down the occupier. There will be a thorn in its throat, and a sword that will cut the roots of the Zionist entity.
Mr. John, the Palestinian Health Ministry said that the Zionist entity's shelling partially damaged Gaza's Al-Durra Children's Hospital on Friday during the series of airstrikes launched on the besieged strip of Lebanon. This is a clear indication that the occupiers' strategy doesn't spare anybody, including innocent children, in hospitals. But what is more shocking is that the silence of the international community in the face of those barbaric aggression. How can you explain this silence and passive behavior?
Well, look, this is not the first time. If you go back to the slaughter of the Palestinians in Gaza in 2014, they attacked United Nations schools, which is clearly marked with a massive white and a blue flag as United Nations schools. They bombed the schools, they killed civilians who actually seek refugee seek refuge in the schools. They killed hundreds of Palestinians inside the school. They committed a massacre in Jabalia camp, United Nations schools. So they attacked Al-Shifa Hospital, which is the only hospital in city center in Gaza city. You know, it clearly is a big mark of the hospital in English and Arabic and Hebrew. This is a hospital. Barbaric, you know, they don't really respect any human right or any convention, anything, you know, in their way. I mean, I give you a good example, which is this photo being removed. Actually, it's not a photo. It's a video was removed from the social media. Where during the attack on Gaza 2014, 80-year-old woman asked a soldier to give her water. He did give her a bottle of water, and after she finished drinking the water, he shot her in the head. So it is a normal practice for these fascists. It's not a strange that they're attacking kindergartens, schools, hospitals. You know. But I want to just go back to one point to regard to your question about Gaza and Lebanon, why they attack Gaza and not Lebanon. But the Zionist Netanyahu claimed that at the time when that missile was actually coming to the Zionist entity from Lebanon, Haniya, the political leader of Hamas, was in Lebanon. So basically, the weakest link in this occasion will be the Gaza Strip. They're covered, they're attacking civilians. So, but the fact that he's in Lebanon, they're not a proof that the missiles come from Hamas. And also what? We should be proud that Hamas and others resist the occupation, you know, because this is the duty of the Palestinians, to resist 24 hours. It's the only way for the Palestinians to keep their dignity and to keep their children safe is to resist and fight back the occupiers.
Perfectly understood. Mr. Dorsey, coming to you, probably this is a question out of the list because it's really amazed me that I have grown up watching this Zionist entity, the so-called Israel, doing crimes all over the world, not just in Palestine, but the question raised, who can hold them responsible for their actions? I mean, now if you take into consideration what is happening in Ukraine, Russia has been sanctioned in all means. But when it comes to this Zionist entity, no one dare, even the international community, even the organization of the whole world, can hold them responsible for their action. What is special about this Zionist entity?
I mean, this relates to your opening question at the beginning of this program, whether a denunciation of Israeli actions by international players was going to make a difference. It's clearly only going to make a difference if words are followed by deeds and words are not being followed by deeds. I think there are two issues here. One is that foreign policy is more often than not a reflection of domestic policy. Israel is in a sense in a unique position in that it has a significant popular base in the United States. It's not a Jewish popular base, it's a Christian popular base, which is a significant segment of the American electorate. And so I think part of the issue is being able to reach that community so that it understands that there are different aspects and different approaches to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. I think the second issue is the issue that you just raised, which is the issue of inconsistency in U.S. and European policies, as when, for example, compares Ukraine to Israel. Now, to be clear, they also are very different. With other words, the Russian invasion of Ukraine was unprovoked. It sort of came out of the blue. Certainly, if one assumes that that is true for the 2014 Russian occupation of Crimea and other parts of Ukraine. On the other hand, the Israeli occupation is the result of the 1967 war, to which there was a build-up. It was not simply an invasion out of the blue. Even so, having said that, increasingly, I think the United States and Europe, and one sees that in the response to the Ukraine war, are paying a price for being inconsistent in their policies.
Mm-hmm. That's the most
now,
important.
Whether or not that price becomes too high,
that's the most important point I wanna raise. It's not about the historical background of Russia and Ukraine war, and on the other hand, Palestine and the Zionist entity, but rather who can hold them responsible for the criminal acts. I don't care about what is happening in Ukraine or even in all the world. I mean, who can hold them and take them to the courts? If someone commits a crime, he should be judged. This is the main idea I'm trying to deliver.
I don't think you can divorce the two. With other words, if you have a system of accountability, the system has to be universal. It's not universal. Of course, you've seen efforts, and we'll see how those efforts proceed, to hold Israel accountable in the International Criminal Court of Justice. But at the end of the day, I think accountability is going to depend on accountability becoming a universal principle, not a selective application.
Very good indeed. Thank you ever so much, Mr. Dorsey. Now, let's tackle another point, probably the last one in our show, because we are running out of time. Lebanese Foreign Ministry has announced its decision to lodge an official complaint with the UN Security Council over the deliberate bombing by the Zionist forces in the southern parts of the country. In a statement, the Lebanese Foreign Ministry confirmed that Minister Abdullah Bouhabib had instructed the Lebanese mission to the United Nations to submit an official complaint to the Security Council over the Zionist aggression and the bombing of the areas in the southern Lebanon at dawn on Friday. The statement stressed that this attack constitutes a blatant violation of Lebanon's sovereignty and UN Security Council resolutions and poses a serious threat to the stability of the southern region. Mr. Farouk, coming to you. This time, the Zionist aggression has reached Lebanon, whose foreign ministry warned that the country is ready to retaliate any further aggression. In your opinion, would the Zionist entity be able to face up to France at the same time? Hamas and the Palestinian factions from one hand and Lebanon from another hand.
That would be very difficult to see. I don't believe that the Lebanese government or the Lebanese officials are going to want to go into war, into an armed confrontation with Israel. I believe that's going to be very difficult to achieve or to even see during our lifetime. However, it depends a lot on what the Iranians want to do. I know that Iran is at the moment going into peace agreements with Saudi Arabia and going into acceptance of what the Chinese have offered on the table. I see China playing a big role in the peace in the world, or at least in negotiations for peace in the world. Would Israel continued aggression cause a coalition between Iran, Lebanon, Hamas, and the usual players from that side? I am not sure this is the right time for it in the world right now. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, I believe that the Lebanese government is doing the right thing. I mean, while we are expecting things to go loose and we are expecting every faction to take actions into their own hands, the right move is to establish at least a complaint with the Security Council. I don't think anything is going to come out of it. I mean, we don't think that there is any actual actions or meaningful actions going to be taken against the Zionist occupation of Palestine. However, it is a step that has to be taken to convince the majority in the world that are being blindfolded by the Zionist regime. Your guest has just said that the Christians in the United States are the ones who are supporting the Zionist occupation, and that is happening because they do not have the information, or they refuse to search further into the Zionist occupation crimes in the land of Palestine. I believe that doing actions like lodging complaints in security councils in the United Nations with civilian organizations and NGOs is going to serve the Palestinian case, and the Palestinian voice will get out more to raise awareness among these communities. However, at the same time, we are seeing that there is dire need in the streets of all the adjacent countries of Israel, and this will create another risk or another danger for the Zionist entity, and that is refugees. If the Israelis decide to continue their aggression against Lebanon, against Syria, what will happen is we will start to see a stream of refugees going towards Tel Aviv and going towards the Zionist entity. We have seen that happen before with Sudanese refugees coming across Egypt to Israel, and we will, I imagine, we will see something more dramatic coming out of the Palestinian camps or the Palestinian territory or out of Gaza. Refugees just peacefully walking towards the Zionist entity, demanding their right in life.
Thank you, Mr. Farouk. Just briefly, Mr. John Phoenix, so we can split the time. We have got a couple minutes between you and Mr. Dorsey. What do you expect that the outcome of this complaint put by Lebanon?
It's like the other 169 complained by the Palestinians and the Arab regimes to United Nations since 1967. This 169 resolution, nobody take attention anyway. They being ignored. Only one resolution worked in 1990. United States resolution to Iraq to withdraw from Kuwait. It works in 24 hours. The 169, with respect, excuse my language, they've been used now as a toilet paper in the United Nations. Nobody take, obviously, any notice, because they needed only one veto for United States and United Nations to shut down any resolution to condemn Israel. Add to that the Zionist puppet regime in UK and the German. They will vote against any resolution.
Thank you.
So it's not going to work, and this resolution, as I said, ended up being used as a toilet paper.
Very good indeed. Mr. Dorsey, the floor is yours. What are you saying about the outcome of this complaint by Lebanon?
Let's face it, Lebanon doesn't have a lot of options. This is one of the few options it has. However, fact of the matter is that the United Nations Security Council is a paralyzed and impotent body at this point. It's impotent because of the veto rights that are granted to the five major powers in the council. It's clear that the United States would vote against the condemnation of Israel in the council. But even if the council were to come to a joint resolution, which is highly unlikely, then unless that resolution has teeth, it's one more statement of condemnation, and that's it.
Thank you ever so much, Mr. Dorsey. You joined me from USA. Thank you ever so much for your participation. Mr. John Phoenix, you joined us from England. Mr. Farouk, you joined us from New Zealand. Thank you ever so much for taking part with us in our show concerning Palestine and Gaza strikes. For better information, you can follow our social media platform. You can also watch again this episode and this show to see what our analyst has stated. All I can say at the end, thank you ever so much for watching and take care of yourself. Good night.